We're going to go ahead and get going here in just a moment. A little bit of housekeeping for the attendees. If you would be so kind, if you have a question during the presentation and you'd like to get an answer doing Q&A, please look on the bottom of your screen. You'll see the Q&A there. Please put your question in there. We'll answer it. If there's something that you're having an issue with that we need to take care of right now, Terry, myself, or any of the panel members can answer it for you, and we'll do that right away. As I said a minute ago, a full version of the program will be available in about 7 days on the CCOC website, as well as the availability of all the slides in the presentation. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us going. We are right around 335 at the moment and still going up. My name is Mark Fine. For those of y'all that don't know me, most of you I think do. I'm the ex-chair of the Commission on Common Ownership Communities. I'm now, I guess, private citizen. I saw that look, council member. I'd like to take the moment and introduce Councilman Andrew Friedson. We go back 5 years, I think, at least. It's been a while. Councilman is District 3 council member. He represents Western and Northwestern Montgomery County. He serves on the Planning, Housing, and Environmental Development, we call it the FED Committee, and the Governmental Operations and Fiscal Policies Committee. He was named the best county freshman legislator for 2019, and was awarded the prestigious Phyllis Campbell Newsom Public Policy Leadership Award in 2019. He's led efforts to strengthen the county ethics laws, public accountability, county transparency. He has sponsored legislation to increase energy savings, renovations in existing buildings, address the affordable housing shortages. He's been a staunch ally of the commission since we have been, he and I have been working together. And during COVID, he led the way for the Public Health Emergency Grant Program that assisted small business and nonprofits, teleworking assistance. You have done anything the commission has ever asked you to do in assisting us in representing about 40% of the county, roughly 1,200 associations. So you don't hear it a lot, but I would like to personally say thank you for hosting another seminar for us and for doing what you do. So with that, I will take it over to the councilman and I'll get the slideshow set up for you.
Terrific. While you're doing that, I want to thank you. You said private citizen. I was thinking to myself, we're not going to let you off that easily. So we appreciate your continued service here and your ongoing service to the county. What you left out is I live in a common ownership community, the second one that I have lived in my adult life. I grew up in a common ownership community, so certainly know it. And I will tell you that I don't have the political acumen or the stomach to run for common ownership community board. So instead I ran for county council. So that's really kind of how I got here. You know, I thought about running for my community leadership and just thought that was far too difficult. The politics were too tough. So I appreciate what everybody does in common ownership communities. We see it at the commission and in the work that you do. We see it from the commission standpoint, the work that each of you do in your community. So I wanted to express my appreciation. It's not lost on me how challenging the work can be and that it is a volunteer effort and you're doing it to support your communities, to help your neighbors, and it's very much appreciated and a very important service. And you know, I'm really pleased to be here to host this a really important issue. for all of us. Of course, at the county level, at the state level, we're really trying to promote the zero emission vehicles program, the ambitious target of 60,000 zero emission vehicles in the state by 2020 and 300,000 by 2025. Mark noted, when you're talking about 40% of the county, we can't get there without you and without a strong partnership between county government, our utility partners, and our private community associations and private residents. So this is part of that ongoing effort to really tackle this challenge and to make sure that we're all effectively in this together, and that you're aware of some of the resources that are available so that we can reach these goals. And I talk a lot about setting ambitious targets. They're not good enough unless we have a ladder for people to actually reach those targets. And we've set some really ambitious goals at the county level and at the state level when it comes to our environmental sustainability. And it's really critical that we provide some of the tools and some of the resources to make them happen. So today we have a really great group of panelists talking about charging stations. And as electric vehicles become more common, we can't have the charging stations only be in areas where single family homes are utilizing them, because of the proportion of the county that don't live in single family homes. And with an urbanizing county, it becomes even more important to happen. And with so many of our newer even single family home communities that are part of common ownership communities, we really need to be working together to make sure that they're available to multifamily homes and to common ownership communities as well. And so, that is really part of what this conversation is about. I'm hoping that at some point this becomes part of the conversation about rooftops and part of the conversation about elevators if you're in that type of building, and parking facilities and the other common elements in your communities that we're talking about. Electric vehicle recharging stations just as part of the standard common elements that we have in the communities throughout the county. And certainly that can't happen without support from the public sector and a partnership between the public and the private sector. And so that's what we're moving towards right now. We know that this infrastructure is going to be critical. About 80% of electric vehicle drivers charge their vehicles at home. Without that opportunity to do it, overnight for those who work, standard daytime jobs, we're not going to make those targets that we set for electric vehicles. And so, providing this opportunity in multifamily buildings is going to be absolutely critical. I really appreciate the fact that we have utilities currently that are offering incentives that we can move forward with these goals. We have representatives here tonight to talk about that with the EV purchasing co-op. So we're 95% of the way to their pledge goal. I'd like to get well over 100. Hopefully after tonight, with a really strong turnout tonight, it seems like we've had great participation. We're going to have more and more Montgomery County residents moving towards electric vehicles, more and more Montgomery County residents living in common ownership communities who have electric vehicles, feeling like they have more than adequate opportunities to recharge and to go about their daily lives, work and play and beyond to be able to move forward. So really appreciate that. Thanks again to Mark Fine. I don't know what the perpetual chair emeritus title would be, but whatever it is, I'll work on it. And that's what we're going to name you. Appreciate all of our representatives from county government, environmental protection department, Department of Permitting Services. We have PEPCO here. We have representatives from the Green Bank, from Clarksburg Condo, representing a common ownership community, and then of course my friend and colleague Delegate Holmes. So appreciate everybody joining us. Looking forward to a really robust conversation. Hopefully it's very educational, and it's part of our continued goal to work together in public and private partnership to advance our environmental sustainability goals. So thank you for that, Mark, and ready to move the
Thank you,
program
sir.
along.
Okay, did presentation come up?
I do not see it.
Let me head back up again. Yeah, I think it's coming over now.
Looks good to me.
There we go. Thank you, sir.
You ready for
And,
me to introduce the first speaker? Should we
yes,
talk
sir.
about the Q&A first?
I covered the Q&A earlier.
Okay, so we're good.
They're going good. Yes, sir.
Fantastic. All right, let's move this right along. Really appreciate our first presenter. We have Brian Boyer, the Senior Planning Specialist for Zero Emissions Vehicles with the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP. Brian joined the department this year, is responsible for developing programs and strategies to help county residents and businesses reduce transportation emissions. This includes educating the public about the benefits of electric vehicles, helping property owners install EV charging, and managing the county's EV purchasing co-op, which I mentioned earlier and which will go into more detail right now. So with that, really appreciate you joining us, appreciate the department's efforts on this important issue, and we'll turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Councilman. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Boer with Department of Environmental Protection. The county, like the councilman said, has set an ambitious goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2027. And that means we want to encourage residents to transition from gasoline vehicles to electric vehicles as soon as possible and figure out what we can do to help them make that transition. And that's one of the things that's bringing us to today's webinar. One of the many benefits of EVs is that they can be charged at home. And for common ownership communities, this can be pretty complicated sometimes. And so the purpose of this webinar is to give you the foundational knowledge you need to understand your charging needs, make a plan, talk to your neighbors, and successfully add EV charging to your community. And so I want to start quickly by reviewing some of the survey responses we received. Mark sent this survey out to folks who had registered. If you haven't gotten a chance to complete the survey, I believe it's going to be sent out via an electronic survey after the presentation as well. But just to highlight a few of the things that we saw, that nearly 70% of the responses shared that your community has at least one EV, and a handful have more than 5 already. And so with figures like that, it's not surprising that 2/3 of the responses indicated that you're looking to install charging within 2 years, and about 1/3 of them even sooner than that. There are still a number of communities that have no plans to install charging and are still in that stage where you're looking for more information. And so we're hoping that this webinar today is going to give you the information you need to make a decision about whether charging is right for your community and know how to proceed. Next slide, please.
Come on. Here we go. Sorry.
No worries. So what's all the buzz about electric vehicles? The bottom line is that your community is going to be full of them sooner than you might think. There's a lot of reasons why people are increasingly interested in electric vehicles. One, they reduce greenhouse gas emissions. 2, they can save you thousands of dollars in fuel and maintenance costs over their lifetime. They're fun to drive, and like I said, they offer you that convenience to charge at home and never go to the gas station again. And because of all these benefits, it's no surprise that the market is growing very rapidly. 9% of the new vehicles that we've seen come into the county in the last year have been electric vehicles, either plug-in hybrid or fully battery electric vehicles. And we expect it to be 50% or more within a few years, thanks in no small part to the federal and state incentives that are encouraging people to go electric and reduce those upfront costs. Next slide, please. And so the billion-dollar question is how do we charge them? And so there are 3 types of electric vehicle supply equipment. Well, you'll hear me say EV chargers. What we're talking about is electric vehicle supply equipment. That's the technical term. And these types of equipment vary based on the power level and how fast they charge. So I'll quickly go through these. Level 1 charging uses a standard outlet. Most new EVs come with a plug. Level 1 charging is slower. It provides just about 5 miles of range per hour of charging, but most people drive less than 40 miles a day. And so overnight level 1 charging will meet people's needs pretty easily. So if you're considering charging in your community, I'll just say don't overlook level 1 charging, especially as a near-term solution. Another note is that level 1 charging, standard outlets, this is how you can recharge electric bicycles, e-bikes. So if you have residents in your community who have e-bikes or asking about e-bike charging, this is this type of standard 120 volt outlet that you'll need for e-bike charging and for EV charging. The next level up is level 2 charging. This is going to require more power. It's going to either plug into a standard dryer outlet, 240 volt outlet, and you'll see level 2 chargers out and about in the community. We have a few of these installed in county parking garages. You'll see them in retail locations. And this is also the type of charging that you'll see in like a single family garage hanging on the wall. These are faster. They give you about 25 miles of range per hour of charging. And that means that most drivers are going to plug in for about 4 to 6 hours at a time. And, you know, if you look at the full battery range of the vehicles that are out there today, going about 250 miles, you're saying, well, 4 to 6 hours, that doesn't get you all the way full. And that's because it's actually recommended to not charge the battery all the way to 100% all the time. Most drivers keep the battery between 20 to 80% full. And so, like I said, that 4 to 6 hours of charging is going to be what most people typically do. For both level 1 and level 2 chargers, you can manage payment for electricity. You can manage who can access those chargers with so-called smart or networked equipment. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're looking for different types of equipment. The smart or networked equipment is going to be able to give you that functionality. Now, finally, level 3 or direct current fast charging. These are the most powerful chargers out there. They're not typically used in multifamily buildings or residential communities. And that's because they require so much power, as much power as a big box store, basically. And but this is what drivers who don't have charging at home, they're typically going to be using these DC fast chargers out in public. And you know, that's not terribly inconvenient. The problem is that over time it's more expensive, and frequent fast charging can actually provide more wear and tear on the battery. And so because of that, your residents who own an electric vehicle are really going to be looking for solutions to charge at home with either level 1 or level 2 charging. So that's what, you know, I've given you this background so you understand that, you know, even though there are solutions and people who live in a multifamily building don't have charging on site now, maybe getting by, okay. Over time, you're going to find people really looking for those solutions at home more and more. And one more thing that it's important to note is that all of these types of EV charging are safe when installed and operated correctly. It's really important that we do this very safely. All these 3 types of equipment are safe when operated correctly. Next slide. So with some of these basics covered, we want to dive into what we need to know about installing charging in common ownership communities. And so as we go through this process, here are 6 keys to keep in mind. Number 1, your charging system is going to be customized to the needs of your community. There's no one size fits all. What you need to really go into thinking that this is a customized process. And, you know, flowing from that, you need to engage your residents and your neighbors to understand what those needs are, and to secure the support, get buy-in from your community. Be proactive as you go about this process. You know, even if you don't have a lot of EVs in your community today, chances are you might in a few years. And so if you want to develop some clear guidelines now, that's going to help residents plan ahead and will save your board some headache in the future if you're not trying to be reactive to a request from a resident to install charging. Number 4, follow all regulations required, including applying for the proper permits. We're going to be talking about the permitting process that applies to the county today. If you live in a jurisdiction that is governed by a different permitting department, make sure you follow those regulations as well. Be prepared for ongoing management of these systems. Once they're in the ground, there's still going to be some ongoing management and maintenance that you'll need to know. And then finally, ask for help. All of the presenters on this panel, the organizations on this panel can provide you information, and many of them have resources and incentives that can help make this a reality for you. So we're here for you and ready to help. Next slide, Mark. So what does a typical project include? I know that there's a lot of information on this slide, but I'll try to break it down for you. You know, the bottom line to know is that this is a deliberate process, step by step, and be prepared for the process to take some months from start to finish, just as you're going into it. So always start by assessing your community's needs to know what type of charging you want, how much of it, and what concerns people might have before going forward. Next, talk to the experts. This includes having an electrical engineer advise you on the needs of the building and where you can install charging. Contact your utility early to tell them about your project to make sure you're eligible for any incentives and what you should do if you need more power. Engage with your association and property managers and follow all community bylaws and requirements. If you haven't developed a formal guidance ahead of time, consider doing that, you know, and this could be a good job for your community's green team. And once you kind of have an idea of what you want to do, you're ready to start designing your project. You're going to choose where you want the charging to be, how much of it you want, and with that in mind, you can contact EVSE vendors, shop around for equipment. You might be limited in the kind of equipment you can buy or the brands you can buy based on the rebates that are out there. Some have the eligible equipment lists, and that can actually help narrow down the selection for you. And then also a lot of these vendors have contractors in their contractor network, and that can also help you simplify the choice of who to do business with. One key here as you're setting up your contract, defining this project, insist on specific contract terms, be very clear about what is in the scope so that there are no surprises and that the work gets done the way you expect. Once you're all set in terms of your design of your project, you're going to get approval from your community. And that might require some education and advocacy. We're going to talk a little bit about that and what that entails and some resources you might have next. You're going to submit those design documents to DPS for a permit. Once approved, you'll begin construction and the county will inspect that work during and after construction. And then once you're finished, you'll complete your applications for your rebates. Make sure you've reached out to your utility beforehand, not at the very end of the project, but you'll complete that application. You'll wait for those rebates to come back. And finally, once the chargers are installed, the EVSE vendor is going to come back out to the site. They'll do what's called a final commissioning. That means turning on the power to the charger, saying, hey, you're good to go. And then they'll also help you set up the management system for those chargers, which will be sort of an online portal where you can go in and you can define the rates that those chargers will charge for people to use them. You might be also able to define who can access them and basically how that system works. And finally, it's good practice to provide some clear information to residents about how to use those chargers and community rules to follow. So once they're set up, once they're ready to go, do some more education so people know how to use them. Next slide, please. running low on time, so I'll try not to take too much time through these things. I do have a few more slides to get through. So yeah, you're going to want to anticipate any objections that people might have in community engagement. You know, these projects can be expensive, they can be disruptive. You know, they can also have concerns about safety or accessibility. So you want to keep that in mind as you go into asking the survey of your residents about, do they plan to purchase an electric vehicle? How soon might they plan to purchase an electric vehicle? And then what's important to them about charging in their community? This charging is going to create new responsibilities for your building management. And so that will include overseeing contracting and construction, managing that maintenance of the chargers. So you want to make sure you're working closely with your management company to make sure that project goes smoothly. And then finally, advocate for this project and educate your neighbors. I can offer myself as a resource with DEP to help you plan your approach, plan how you're going to talk to your neighbors, find resources to address specific questions. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you need anything. Next slide, Mark. One of the big questions around site design is this a shared charger that's going to be open to everybody, or are you going to have private chargers for individual assigned or deeded spaces? We'll put some of the pros and cons for each approach here. You know, I'm not going to spend too much time on here in the interest of time, but you can see here that there's no one right way to do it, and you're trading off between cost and ease of access, convenience. Next slide. So you'll need to decide exactly where these are going to go, and this is going to be mainly driven by the limitations of your electrical service and the layout of your parking area. You want to choose to install close to your existing electrical service if you can, to reduce costs. If you have a parking garage, some of these smart chargers require Wi-Fi or mobile signal. So if you're in kind of a basement area of that garage that doesn't get a lot of service, that could be a problem. And the number of chargers is limited by the available electrical capacity, both of the nearest panel and of the building. DPS is going to talk a lot about how exactly you can calculate how much capacity you have. So a good rule of thumb, how much charging do you need? One level 2 plug can serve up to 3 vehicles, not at the same time, but over the course of a day. Of course, that means that people are going to need to coordinate about when that vehicle is charging and move your vehicle, which can be a kind of a headache, and that's why some people consider more charging. One thing you might want to do, you look at your parking area and ask yourself, what's going to happen when 10% of these vehicles are electric? What happens when there's more than 10%? You may want to do some additional make-ready work in a project now, and that's going to save you expenses in the future. Next slide. So what does this charging cost? Again, it varies on the level of charging and the extent of the electrical work you need. If you have sufficient power in a nearby circuit, your costs are going to be low. If you have to upgrade that main electrical service or do a lot of trenching under your parking lot, your costs are going to be higher. The average cost for equipment and installation in a commercial project is around $6,000 per station. And for comparison, if you're installing a residential level 2 charger in a private garage or something like that, that's going to cost about $1,200. So just for frame of reference. Next slide. But before you get sticker shock, know that there are thousands of dollars in incentives per project available from both the state of Maryland and your local utilities. Maryland Energy Administration offers 40% off the equipment and installation up to $4,000 per charger. Their budget this year is a total budget of $1.8 million, but they expect to use all of that. So you will want to check to make sure there's funding that is still available when you go to start your project, so you can get that funding. PEPCO is going to be able to speak about their program in detail a little bit later. One thing I'll say is that these utility programs the bulk of them are for multifamily buildings. And so you might have single family, either townhomes or single family detached homes in your community. You'll need to check with your utility to see what is eligible for what incentives in your community. Next slide. And coming towards the end here, thanks everybody. You know, I want to provide some more information about how to manage that charging experience and what to expect. I mentioned the networked chargers. That's how you're going to manage that access and charge for payment. That comes with a cost, a recurring subscription of about $40 to $60 a month. You'll need to, of course, pay for the electricity that you're going to use. A good rule of thumb is that it may be up to $50 per month per vehicle that's using the charging. And another thing to keep in mind is that commercial electricity rates have something called a demand charge, and that's applied based on the maximum power used on the property. And so you'll want to, again, talk to your utility, understand where that demand charge is going to come into play, so you're not surprised by a large demand charge when those chargers turn on. There are ongoing maintenance issues with these equipment. They come with a standard warranty, but they also have a maintenance plan that you can subscribe to. And you may run into a broken cord or a network or software issue. They might just get dirty over time and need cleaning. So work with your property manager, understand what they're going to do and what you'll need the EVSE vendor to do. And then finally, we get a lot of questions around managing access. How do you do it? I've mentioned this management platform. When they set that up, they're going to give you the option to set a rate for what to charge for either time-based, like dollars per hour of charging, or how much energy you're going to use. You can even set different rates for different times of day, and you can define the specific users that have access that can actually get that system to turn on. So if you either don't want anyone from outside of your community to be able to use those chargers, or maybe you want to provide access to the public, you can define those rules and exactly how that works. In practice, the registered user is going to scan a code from their phone to start the session. And some, but not all platforms allow you to make reservations. So that could be a way that you can share that resource in the community. One thing is that no matter what type of virtual system you have, you still have to consider signage on that space and what the parking restriction is going to be, as well as how you're going to enforce it. So I believe that Maryland law allows you to advertise on a sign a $100 fine for improperly parking in an EV space. So consult with your legal advisor about whether that's something that's allowed in your community and how that actually to go about it. Next slide, please, Mark. So I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. These slides will be available after the webinar, and I'm also available to answer questions. We have these links to these resources in here. And then next slide, Mark. And yeah, please feel free to contact me with any questions or suggestions you have. We're developing a plan for additional EV programs and strategies, and your input would be extremely valuable. So thank you all for listening, and I'll turn it back to Councilman Friedson.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate all that information. I want to move us forward to our next topic, which is focused on permitting and codes. We have Anthony Toussaint with us, who is the manager of commercial electrical and fire protection systems inspections with the Department of Permitting Services. Anthony is the manager of commercial electrical systems. He's an expert in electrical safety, both a licensed master electrician and a licensed professional electrical engineer in the state of Maryland. His team and he review and inspect hospitals, high-rise buildings, schools, commercial, industrial, religious, and multifamily buildings, including 4-story townhomes. So no better person to join us for this next topic. And without further ado, we'll turn it over to you, Anthony. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, my name is Anthony Toussaint, and I'm the manager of commercial electrical at DPS. I manage the commercial electrical plan reviewers, the commercial electrical inspectors, and the fire protection inspectors. We regulate electrical installations in Montgomery County with electrical safety as our primary mission. With regards to the emerging technology of electric vehicles, it is our intention to ensure that it is safe for the residents and visitors of Montgomery County. And I will turn it over to Brian to start the slides. Brian.
Good evening, folks. My name is Brian Bomer. I'm the Sustainability Energy Mechanical Manager, and I'm just going to quickly touch on some of the high points here within the commercial permitting process, and then we'll hand it off to Anthony for a detailed example of some of the electrical review that occurs on our end. So when a project comes in, we ask that you submit your application online, and that's at montgomerycountymd.gov/DPS. And from that website, you can find information on our permitting processes. You can type in electric vehicles in our search bar, and it'll take you to some FAQs and some information on how to proceed. So once your application is into us, our fees are determined on the cost of the project. So there is no flat rate associated with this. As Brian mentioned earlier, as the projects are more complex, the costs are more complex, and the building fee or the permitting fee is reflected in that. So once all the information is submitted to us, we'll go through a screening process. And in that screening process, we're just making sure that you have all the correct drawings and support documents sent to us. And we do require that all these are signed and sealed by a licensed professional. The permit technicians on our staff will help you through the screening process. If you have any questions, that's when they'll step in to help with that process. Once the permit application makes it through screening, we assign it to our different review disciplines. And what you would expect on a traditional commercial electric vehicle charging project, so as Brian mentioned, that's going to be primarily our level 2s and 3s, is you'll see a life, safety, and architectural plan review. And the reason we do this is primarily based on the location of the chargers. We want to make sure that you are not installing a charger in the way of egress pathway for, say, fire evacuation. There's also some other aspects of architectural life safety that are reviewed at this time. A lot of the work is done in electrical. Here we're gonna take a look at our equipment specifications, line diagrams, load calculations, etc. Also, structural is reviewed at this time, and the reason for that is mentioned earlier. If this happens to be in a parking garage, the mounting of these electric vehicle charging stations can impact the structural integrity of the building. So we want to take a look at that. So once all of our disciplines review, our goal internally is 30 days or less for first round. If there are any comments and the project is sent back to the team, once that is back to our plan reviewers, we have a 15-day turnaround goal for our additional rounds of review. So once all this is all approved, we will issue 2 permits. So the commercial building permit, which encompasses all of the different disciplines I mentioned, and there's an electrical trade permit, and that trade permit must be pulled by the electrician, and that is what contains the details behind the equipment specifications primarily. Yeah, you're moving a little faster to the slides. Back it up one for me real quick. And then, of course, we have our inspections, as mentioned, our rough and our final. So some important points to consider, and you're going to hear this a lot this evening, but I think it's important to hear it from all the different groups because it is integral to the success of these projects. And evaluation of your existing system is critical. We're going to talk about why in an example that Anthony is going to provide us here in a few minutes. We need a licensed electrical engineer to provide or to perform this evaluation. We need to know all the details in the project, and so do you as you make your decision on how to move forward. We unfortunately cannot provide those recommendations, but just for reference, DLLR agency has a licensed or a database of licensed professionals available on their website. And as mentioned, now versus future makes a big difference in the budget. This is not a linear budget, right? If adding one more does not mean that the price just goes up one more unit. It can get very complicated quick. And so having that evaluation done, looking at what you need today versus, as Brian mentioned, what you may need in just a few short years may have a real big impact. And so we see this a lot, and we want to make sure that you're thinking about it in advance. So we're going to talk a little bit about power limitations in that example. So just bear with me for a minute. Next slide, please. And so some of the common issues we see on our end, again, we're going to go over an example of the total amperage of the chargers, right? Because it's not just about adding 1 + 1 + 1 to get 3. It's a little more complicated than that. So we're going to talk about that. Again, you know, if there are structural changes needed to something such as a parking structure, this can actually have a pretty big impact on the review process and the project itself. So just know going into that it's important to understand what you're impacting. And of course, as mentioned, that egress path can make a big difference. We had a commercial building that there was a perfect spot for electric vehicle charging station, made all the sense in the world. But when we looked at the fire safety exit strategy, the cord impeded that, which of course, clearly we all know is was a no-go. So one thing that is really interesting that we get a lot of questions and comments about is sort of the responsibility of permission, right? Like, you know, who gets these and how we manage that. And the simple way to say it is it's not Department of Permitting Services responsibility. This is something the COCs really need to take full ownership of and determine. Because as mentioned earlier, we have a first come, first serve issue occasionally. And that means that if there's ability for 1 or 2 chargers to go on the system immediately, that's great. But when that 3rd or 4th charger comes on, their costs are exponential. And so how you manage that is critical to how your clients view your way of handling these situations. So please, again, think about how this impacts decisions as you move forward. We do offer pre-design meetings for complex projects. I don't have a definition for complex projects, but if you're going to come into a parking garage and add 25 charging units and you're looking at heavy up to your equipment and you're going to be adding capacity, I consider that a complex project. Please come to us when you have proof of concept and you have some of the plans worked out. We will work through the rest of them with you to make sure that you are headed in the right direction for code compliance. If there's 1 charger, you know, that's probably something that we wouldn't consider a complex project and would not provide a pre-design meeting for. So we do ask for some discretion there. And so with that said, this is the quick overview that I'm hopefully was able to provide some insight to. I'm going to hand it back over to Anthony, where he's going to provide an example of how we take a look at the calculations based on parking infrastructure capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to look at a typical example of a 40-unit multifamily building. That could be an apartment building, it could be a condo building, or it could be a series of townhouses with a meter stacked electrical system. Okay, now let's assume that each unit has a 200 amp panel. Okay, now the question is 40 by 200 would be 8,000 amps. I can assure you that the main of that building does not have 8,000 amps. It will never happen. Okay, so 8,000 amps is a no, that will never happen. What's happening is they will do what we call a load calculation. Okay, now I've taken this example from the National Electric Code 2017 edition in the handbook, page 1229. And in that example, the load for the 40 units comes out to be 880,000 VA. VA means volt amperes. Okay. Now, based on that, if you divide by the voltage, which is 240 volts, that's a typical household voltage, then you get 3,667 amps. Still, they will not provide you with 3,667 amps. Okay, because the reason behind that is not all equipment is on at the same time. Like your refrigerator, your air conditioner, they all go off for some time and take a break. Okay, and your dryer, use it once in a while, your microwave once in a while, and so on. Okay, so most of the loads are not continuous. Now, here is the way the load is actually calculated. And that is done by one method called the optional method in the NEC, okay, where they have the demand load of the total load of the connected load of 880,000 VAs multiplied by what they call a demand factor of 0.28. Okay, now that is the actual calculated load, which is 246,000 VAs. And if you divide that by 240 volts, you get 1,026 amps. That is the amount of amps you need for that building. The only problem is they do not make a circuit breaker of 1,026 amps. They will make one, the next higher one is 1,200 amps. So your circuit breaker for your main, for that 40-unit condo building will be 1,200 amps. Next slide, please. Okay, now with 1,200 amps, if you subtract the actual calculated load, you will get a spare capacity of 174 amps. That is the amount of amps you can play with now and decide how many chargers you can install. And for level 2 chargers, the approximate load on a level 2 charger is about 32, 33 amps. So if you divide the 174 amps of spare capacity divided by 33, you will get 5.2. So you can actually install 5.2 chargers, or 5 chargers, I should say, with no problem at all. Okay, you don't have to increase your service, you don't have to do any heavy up. You can go right ahead and install your 5 level 2 chargers with no issues. Okay, but you have to provide calculations and show us that that can be done, and then we'll approve it. You go ahead and install your equipment. All right, now that is where the problem lies. People believe because they have 1,200 amp panel, everybody can install a level 2 charger. If you do that, you're going to overload the system and create problems. And that is why we have to ask you to hire a design professional, an electrical engineer, to do an assessment of what you have and what you can do and what you need to do to install all the chargers you need to install. And I thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate that, both from Anthony and from Brian. Why don't we now keep moving along? We're going to get the PEPCO perspective and turn it over to Dan O'Connor, who is the manager of smart grid programs for PEPCO Holdings. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dan. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Councilman, and good evening, everyone. I'm hoping to spend about 10 minutes here on an agenda that Mark has shown on the next slide, if you don't mind moving forward one, to cover our multifamily rebate program. I'll try to give a high-level impression of where that comes from and how customers and multifamily properties can benefit from it. The specific eligibility for those programs, as someone has already mentioned, we do have some definitions that may disqualify folks. So I'll go through the eligibility. 2 ways that customers are already participating in our rebate program. I want to spend a little bit of time clarifying what PEPCO unfortunately cannot assist with, and it seems like that what some of the presenters have already done, just to clarify our roles and responsibilities. I'll give a quick status of where we are in that rebate program, because it is finite. There's a certain amount of time with it and a certain number of rebates that we're permitted to give out by the Maryland Public Service Commission. And then I want to proactively answer some questions that have already been sent in and just give a quick list of some rebate recipients in multifamily properties already. So Mark, if you could move to the next slide, please. Okay, so very high level, in 2019, a 5-year pilot program called EV Smart in Maryland was kicked off. All of these incentives, this program had to be approved by the Maryland Public Service Commission. And the overall pitch of the EV Smart program was, let us learn about how customers respond to different levels of rebates. Let the utility try to learn what demand may be on the grid so that we can build it out better in the future. And over those 5 years, we'll get much better at anticipating the needs from both sides of the electric vehicle influx that we're beginning to see. And so there is more to the EV Smart program than just the multifamily incentive. And I'd encourage anyone to go to our website here for that EV Smart program, particularly if you live in a single family home that also has rebates available. But specific to the multifamily property rebate program, Pepco will rebate 100% of the cost of level 2 charging equipment that is eligible for our program. And we're working with several EVSE charging vendors in order to increase the number of folks that are available on that list. We'll also rebate 50% of the network cost. That's the network that's needed to transmit data from the charger itself, and 100% of the installation. Those rebates are capped at $15,000 per charging station. And for any given available property, we can do a maximum of 2 charging stations, adding up to $30,000 worth of rebates per property. And that cap is obviously there so that the distribution of this incentive goes to many people and not just one. I do want to point out here the definition of a multifamily property, or the official term of multi-dwelling unit, is a residential building with more than 3 units of housing contained within one building. And so that was what we were given in terms of our program administration. And so we have to stick to that in terms of eligibility. And regarding our limits in our Pepco Maryland territory, Pepco Holdings, as some may know, serves many different territories, not just in Maryland, but in other states. For the Pepco Maryland territory, we have a 100 rebate limit, or rebates for 100 chargers. And we are not yet close to that limit. So I'm really happy to be talking to everyone tonight and hoping to really see an increase in applications for this program. Next slide, please, Mark. Okay, so for eligibility, and this is also listed on our website, the Pepco customer must be on a certain rate schedule. And if you are in a townhome or a condo, it's likely that you are on one of these rates. You must be in a multifamily unit as defined on the previous slide. The purchases, the installation of the chargers must be after the program was kicked off in 2019. In order to receive your rebate, paperwork must come along with it. And I'll talk a little bit about how we can try to help with that along the way. There is a time limit. Once the installation is done, the rebate application must be received within 30 days. That does not mean the same thing as you have to wait until the installation is complete to notify us that you are applying. I do want to stress that as soon as you know that you would like to move forward with installing, or even thinking about installing, you can contact us and we can help as best we can to get you eligible for the program. And then you do have to be willing to give Pepco your charging data. And that comes through the cloud, the 5-year cloud plan that we would pay 50% of for. The reason for that is because one of the main benefits of this 5-year pilot is understanding what the charging data is, what the behavior is, so that we can proactively plan to build out our grid to accept and to increase the capacity to meet the demand. So the data is very important part of the pilot. And then, as I mentioned, we'll cover 50% of that cloud plan. Next slide, please, Mark. So there are 2 ways to go about participating in this. One is much more involved on the Pepco side, meaning the customer would involve Pepco very early on, talk to us, and we can assist as a coordinator, so to speak, everything from selection of the charger all the way up to installing the charger. And so that's listed on this slide. A customer would submit an application. An assessment will be done of the property by a third-party partner of ours to understand if you would qualify for the program. We then move on to an estimating phase, selecting equipment from our eligible list, trying to understand what the installation cost would be. Nothing is moved forward with until we understand what the cost to the customer will be, how much the rebate would actually cover of that cost. And then installation would be coordinated through Pepco for your level 2 charger. And again, the listed or the eligible amounts are listed here. On the next slide, Mark is described a bit more of an independent way that a customer can go about this, purchasing a charging station on their own, of course, wanting to make sure that it's in our approved list of chargers, making sure that your permits are in line with requirements, finding an electrician to do the installation for you, ensuring that inspection is done and everything is up to code, and then submitting the rebate afterward, making sure that everything that is required is there, and then you would then receive your rebate 4 to 6 weeks later. So 2 approaches, trying to stay adaptable to folks who may want to take more of an independent approach, or the folks who would like Pepco involved earlier on. Mark, if we could go to the next slide. Okay, some clarifications. The EV Smart team that I oversee, we have project managers assigned. One, Lori Van Hoy, who will be presenting in a subsequent webinar here this weekend. She's the project manager for Maryland EV Smart. And so she and other members of our team are there to help you through our process, our reviews, keeping you up to date about how things are going in that pipeline. However, we can't help with some of the other challenges related to charger installation, such as HOA discussions about whether you would like an EV charger, how many of them, where should they be located, etc. We don't really have any sway. We don't have any sway at all over property policies or bylaws associated with the condos, division of costs between residents, anything having to do with this asset and what it will cost your community after you pay the main power bill. We can't really help anything about that. Nor can we help with historically, if you have a master meter to the property or an individual meter, how you would like to divvy up the cost with those. The upgrades to the buildings, though Pepco is involved in heavy ups and increasing capacity, I want to be clear that the rebates that I just talked about and the incentives do not cover upgrades where they needed for the program. It's just for what was listed. And then also, if you are interested in a managed charging software solution, if you're getting into, you have large amounts of demand that are coming into your property because of EVs, there is software out there and solutions that can help balance that load. We are not, Pepco is not involved in any of those solutions. And Mark, if you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so where does the program stand now? As I mentioned, it started in 2019. It's a 5-year program. Well, we've successfully installed or rebated 15 charging stations in multifamily residences. That sounds like it's not really that many, though the EV Smart program launched in 2019. The multifamily rebate program did not really get going in earnest until much time after that. Through some work with the Public Service Commission, we were able to change the rebate amounts so that they were more favorable or beneficial to customers. And so in addition to those 15 we've already completed, there are 16 in the pipeline in Pepco territory. So doing the math, there's plenty of headroom for more applications to be coming our way, and we'd really like to see that. There's another point on this slide about what we call a rebate reassignment form. We have seen several condo associations hire out third-party consultants who would like to help them with how to best take advantage of all types of rebates. And one issue that we saw happening was that contractor could not be directly paid by the rebate itself. the rebate had to go to the customer and then go to the contractor, causing a time lag that some contractors weren't really able to accept as a risk. This rebate reassignment form allows customers, when they see it appropriate, to reassign that the rebate recipient would actually be the contractor themselves. And so one last point here in bold is that you do not have to wait until the charging stations are installed to let us know. The EV Smart team would much rather know about your interest, about how involved you'd like us to be, what option you'd like to take advantage of very, very far in advance, so that you get into our pipeline soon and we can begin planning with you. Mark, on the next slide, which I think is my last, I have some questions that I want to proactively answer. The first one is, do you have to wait until the charger is installed? No, just to iterate that, you do not. Please reach out to us early. Are there incentives for single family properties? Yes, there are, and please visit our EV Smart website to look at those. Those include both rebate incentives as well as discounts to the rates on your electricity that you're using to charge your car. Are there any special rates for HOA multifamily properties? No, there are not. This is a difference between multifamily properties and single family homes. There are no specific EV rates for charging. I think in an earlier presentation, demand charge was mentioned. So yes, it is possible that a demand charge would increase if the load or the use of your electrical use in your building increased substantially and increase your demand charge. The way that a demand charge is calculated is data is collected every 15 minutes for what your demand is, and that maximum demand over the course of a month is charged on a per kilowatt basis. So if you were to install so many electric vehicle chargers, or you were to use them all at the same time or in conjunction with when you're using something else, your maximum demand may go higher than it was before. There are also some details on here about different types of demand charges that you may see on your bill, and that's detailed here just for information. The transmission demand charge only applies for peak usage. How can we reduce demand charges? Well, I mentioned managed charging software. In my opinion, if you're installing 1 or 2 level 2 chargers in your condominium, I don't think that there's going to be substantial increases in demand charges. Once you get up to potentially, DC fast chargers or multiple level 2 chargers, you may start to see that tick up. And then what if an electric upgrade is needed? Well, the new business team at Pepco is responsible for any and all electric upgrades. It is a separate team that, of course, my team can help get you in touch with. And Mark, on the next slide, I'm not sure if I have anything else, but that may be it from me. Oh, sorry. So these are some examples. I saw some questions coming in the Q&A about success stories, so to speak, for rebate recipients. These installations at condominiums in Montgomery County, these have all been recent recipients. So yes, we are having some successes. I'm very happy about that. We would like to see more. So please don't be shy about reaching out to our team. And thank you very much. I'll turn it back to the councilman.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Dan, for all that information. We're now going to turn it over to a case study in Clarksburg with Robert Borkowski. Robert is a passionate advocate of renewable and sustainable energy with a lot of hands-on experience designing, installing, and managing these facilities, 6 commercial facilities for Clarksburg Condominium 2. In addition to a number of facilities at his home as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Robert, and Robert can go into more detail about some of that hands-on work.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, so let me introduce myself. My name is Robert Borkowski. I'm the president of Clarksburg Condominium 2. On the slide, you can actually see where we are located, pretty much north of the Montgomery County. Our association is made of 2 buildings, 40 units. We have 12 private garages and assigned parking spaces. We have a 47 unsurfaced parking lot. Out of those 47, 6 of them are now dedicated to EV charging. and 3 handicap spots. You can see a little bit more about our association in the link below. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk to you because some of our audience might be users, or some of us might be the one that are interested to actually install it and maintain and service that equipment. And as was mentioned before, when we're talking about EV charging stations, we are really talking about the EV/AC, electrical vehicle supply equipment, right? And there are level 1 and level 2s. And so the only real difference between level 1 and 2 is just how, on what voltage they are operating, right? So you can see on the top, you see 120 volts ACs, and on the bottom is 240. Some of them, as you can see towards the right-hand side, look the same because they are the same. The difference is just the plug, and the unit itself auto detects what voltage is connected to. So next slide, please.
Oh,
okay.
let me go
Yes.
back up one. Sorry.
Okay. Yes. So the other thing is in the industry, we talk about EVSEs, but the public really they are talking about when they talk about EVSEs, they really talking about calling it charging stations or EV charging stations, right? And in fact, I would just educate some individuals just to be aware that the EVSE it's not charging the vehicle. Cars have their onboard chargers. So the only thing that the car is pulls the electricity from the level 1 or level 2. Okay. So next, that's what I want to straighten out. Next slide, please. And for the next set of arguments, don't be intimidated about the EV/AC equipment because it's scary if you look at it. But what it really is just a plug, really. It's just a little bit smarter than the regular plug. So the level 1 is just 120 volts, level 2 is 240 volts. So the only difference between the plug you find in your house or in your garage is that whenever you plug the vehicle to the EVS equipment, that EVS equipment will communicate with your vehicle and it's gonna tell it how much current can it pull. That's all it does, because the vehicle is charging. So the vehicle would not pull more current than the EVSE allows it. Okay, so it's just so you can simplify in your mind what you're trying to achieve by installing EV charging stations. Just think about it. I'm just installing a 240 plugs, but they look a little bit differently. Next slide. So here's the overview of what we have installed. We did install 6 level 2 EV charging stations. So the next slides, I'll just go through all of them. So please, next slide. So we installed 6 Juice Boxes Pros. They are commercial grades, and they're capable, and we are charging our end users to charge it. So there are different ways you can initiate the charge. You can use it through your smartphone application. You can use your RFID card, looks like it's a credit card, or you can simply snap a picture of the equipment's QR code that's going to redirect you to the website, and you can enter the credit card information to pay for the charge. And here are just a few pictures of how it looks like. Next slide, please. So our installation was a surface-mounted metal stands, and we installed safety bollards as well, the EV signs and the right painting to indicate this is the EV charging stations. Next slide. So the biggest thing what we did, we actually installed dedicated brand new service, 3-phase 400 amp commercial service, just to service the EV charging stations. So we also have enough capacity in that brand new service to add 11 additional EV charging stations in the future when the need arises. And what we did as well, we installed additional conduit in the ground for those future improvements. So if in 5 years or so, if we need to install more EV charging stations, we do not have to retrench 100 feet or so from the load center to where the location of the new chargers are. As well, lastly thing, I just want to mention, we did install the 3/4 inch crash rack pad for easy access and safety. I'm sure the contractors and the inspectors from DPS would appreciate that, especially at the raining days. Next slide, please. So since we are using the commercial grade equipment that we are charging our customers to use, we need to have the internet connection so the chargers can communicate with the appropriate software for payments and charge the credit cards as well. We can monitor the equipment, so you can see a little bit of what we deal with. So we have a dedicated network as well as the Wi-Fi, which is wireless internet. And next slide. So for us, in our situation, the board of directors were the ones who wanted to install the EV charging stations. So even though the board of directors wanted to do it, depends on the bylaws. You have to go check with your legal counsel if your board members can actually make that vote themselves. In our situation, I just split this information for you. This is what we got directly from our lawyers. So what happens is this: in our situation, the board of directors would have to seek 2/3 approval for all the homeowners. So pretty much 100% of the homeowners will have to vote in. If they did not vote, that would count as a no. And luckily to report that we got a vote. Next slide. And here's a little bit of the pictures and progress of our constructions. So I don't want you to be scared. I believe this is probably the most complex installation, meaning that we were actually getting the power from the transformer that was across the parking lot. So our plan was actually to use directional drilling. Unfortunately, doing the drilling, the contractor hit an obstacle. I put it in the red, and so the decision had to be made on the spot. What do we do? So within 15 minutes discussion, we decided, okay, we have to open up and trench across the parking lot. Unfortunately, that cost extra money because we had to repair the surface of the parking lot. Next slide. Here's a little bit more of trenching situation. So here's the location of our transformer. This is a three-phase, so we had enough capacity, so we were lucky in that aspect. On the top right corner, you can see the conduits for the load center. They were running two 5-inch conduits under the parking lot. Next slide. And here's one of the things I wanna stress it out. The most important part of the project is the service panel, meaning how much capacity you have. As Anthony was mentioning, you can just add as many as you want. You gotta make sure that you have enough capacity. And for us, that's what we did. We decided, unfortunately, in our building, our capacity, we had only 60 amp available. So that was a no-go from the get-go, because 60 amp, you're just gonna be able to connect maybe 1 or 2 chargers, but that was not what we wanted. So that's the situation. With us, we went with the dedicated service. And as you can see, we got a green sticker, final inspection approved. Next slide. And here are the numbers specific for our project. So the total cost was $62,000. We received 2 different types of rebates, one from Maryland Energy Administration for $24,000, and rebates for the Potomac Edison EV driving rebates for $20,000. So net cost out of pocket to associations for that entire setup was $18,000. Or if you divide this by 6 charging stations, that comes out to be $6,000 per charge per EV, car charger, which is EVAC, but let's just stick with the EV chargers. And as you can see, this is pretty much what was in line with Brian's slides, what he mentioned. And I just want to for the reference point, I want to show you that since our unit, our association is 40 units, if you divide by the 18,000 by 40, that comes out to $450 per unit of the condominium. And if you can look at it, such a great comparison, what I want to say is such a great improvement to the association. Small amount of $450, you multiply this to get equipment worth of $62,000. So again, time is the essence. All the rebates, everything's going at the moment, so it's opportunity to get that. Because quite frankly, when you do this installation, you as an association or as an individual or entity, you are responsible for the gross cost, which is the $62,000. This is what you owe to all your contractors, to all your suppliers, and what's not. And after your installation, it's your responsibility to make sure that you still qualify for the rebates, that you file timely for the rebates, and that the rebates qualify for the equipment that you installed. So just keep that in mind. I don't want to scare you. I just want to make sure that you are aware that you are at the bottom line, so you are responsible for $62,000 or whatever the amount is minus the rebates. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that our charging stations, we do charge customers pay per charge, and we have two rates. One is for the residents, registered residents, that we charge them currently 20 cents per kilowatt hour. We also put in a 1 cent per hour, just so they are aware that if there's abuse being done by the users, we can always increase that fee. But right now, this is just a nominal fee, 1 cent per hour. And at the moment, we do not collect any connection fees, meaning once you plug in. The other rate is the public rate. So anybody, either our neighbors next door, or anybody passing by, or your guests could come in, park the vehicle, and charge it for 30 cents per kilowatt hour, plus the 5 cents per hour no connection fee. And I just throw you some numbers at the bottom. You can see that since our charging stations do provide up to 8.3 kW of electricity or power, and then if you do the math, that comes out to about $1.67 per hour, and the charging rate is about 29 miles per hour. And if you're on the public rate, that same thing would cost a user $2.54. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, and the next thing is the cost of operation, the cost to operate. So that was also discussed on prior slides, so it's pretty much right on. So it's, as you can see, all the information is very similar. In our case, we do pay a subscription fee, which is $10 per plug per month. So in our case, since we have 6 EV charging stations, that's $60 a month or $720 a year. We do have to pay for the internet connection to have the communication between the EVSEs and the service. And then the electricity cost. This is the biggest obstacle for us at the moment because of the demand charges. We are, since we're just operating for the last 6 months, we're still trying to figure out what is the best way to price it because of the peak demand. So right now, even though we have 6 EV charging stations, we actually did incorporate a limit. We did 16 kW limit on all 6 chargers. So if all 6 chargers would charge at the same time, they would have to share the 16 kW. Next operating cost is the credit card processing fee. Oh, if you go back one slide, just go back to one. This is the credit card processing fee. So this is pretty much industry standard. It's 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction. So I just give you a little bit of numbers so you have reference points. So to charge 100 miles, you need about 28.5 kWh, kilowatt hours of electricity. Pump into your batteries, that's going to take you about 3.5 hours to charge. And if you're on the residential rate, it's going to cost the end user $5.74. And out of that, the association would have to give away the 47 cents for the processing fee. Same thing is in the public rate. So you can see $8.75 to charge. Processing fee would be 56 cents. And unfortunately, it's about 6.4% of the total cost of the revenue that the association collected. Next slide, please. And then here's the impact. This is what actually drives me. I just want to make sure that whatever we do, there is a physical impact to what we installed. So since March 16th this year until just yesterday, that's 6 months, our charging stations actually delivered enough electricity to offset 20,000 miles driven. That's equivalent of saving, or not burning, 800 gallons of gasoline. Or in different perspectives, that's 15 barrels of gasoline that did not burn the last 6 months just because of our charging stations. And the biggest kicker of this is our EV charging stations are only utilized at 3% capacity, meaning that on average, every single charging station is being used by 43 minutes per day. So if we will get to 25%, this is probably the maximum you could get, meaning that each charging station would charge 6 hours a day, which is pretty much charging overnight. That would be our goal. Okay, there's more information you can actually find from our website, evse.html. Next slide, please. Okay, so it's, one back.
That one or
There's just
that
one.
one? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so what happens is just the overview is pretty much I'm repeating what all the panelists was mentioning, but as you can see, it's all, we did follow what they said. So yes, it works, the process works, but I wanna make it very clear. The technical design, number one, I think is very important. You have to dream big. It doesn't happen all the time. I did not get that big eureka moment until I was a little bit more involved with actually installation. But at the moment, at the very beginning, we were thinking about installing maybe 2 or 3 charging stations, right? Just like everybody else. And then I just I went back, I took a few steps back, I started crunching numbers and see what's gonna happen in the future. And then by doing the numbers, like, we're gonna do all this work and we don't install only 2 or 3 chargers. And matter of fact, the cost, the largest cost is the labor. It's not the equipment itself. So putting all the conduits in the ground, putting all the wires in the ground, this is where you spend the money. So if you do it, go big, meaning that you don't have to install maximum amount of chargers, but put the infrastructure that can hold that. Okay, so think about yourself. How many EV chargers do you need to have if all your residents drive EVs? Not today, but it might happen, in 10, 12 years or 15 years. So I think about, you need about 1 EV charger per 5 to 6 vehicles. Again, nobody knows this answer. This is only speculation because that's what we learn. Even Pepco trying to figure out, how we're using the charging station. That's what they need the data. Okay. And so I'm not going to read through all the steps, but I just want to throw it out there so you know. But the other design, I want to talk about the financial design. Obviously you are responsible for the entire cost. So do you want to use it out of your cash reserves, or you could finance it? We actually opted to financing to preserve our cash reserves. So work with the Montgomery County Green Bank. So next representatives will be talking about it. Next thing is the financial rebates. The window of opportunity is narrow and it might close. As mentioned by Dan, there's only X amount of those rebates and they might be gone tomorrow because we don't know how many applications they might receive after tonight. Hopefully, there's a lot of applications coming in and first come, first serve. So make sure you get those rebates while you can and make sure that your equipment is the right one, okay? Yes, and one thing I want to mention is the financial legal, point 2D. Just make sure you understand what the limitations are. For the Maryland rebate program, when you have dual charging stations, meaning that 1 pedestals and 2 plugs, that rebate program counts them as 1. So if we would up to install 3 duals, our association will be only able to be qualified for 3 rebates. So that's why we did 6 individual charging stations so we can qualify for the maximum amount of rebates. But if you're in doubt, always reach out to the rebate representatives, and from my experience, they are always responsive. Next slide, please. Yeah, so contract the work. Again, work with your electrical utility. Again, they might not give you all the answers, but they're gonna guide you, or at least give you the right ideas to where to go with. One of the reasons we went with 400 amp because I reached out to the utility and they pretty much guide me to don't settle down because 200 amp service would not allow you to expand beyond X amount of the charging stations. So that's the reason we went with the much larger service. And next one, work with your department permitting services. I'll tell you, that was the greatest team I was working with. Any project complex like this will always hit some obstacles. And every time I have a chance to talk, I cannot say anything better about the Department of Permitting Services because they helped me out extremely with moving the obstacles and guiding us to the right direction to do the right installation. So, make sure you reach out for guidance to them. And again, Brian mentioned that, get a detailed written contract, meaning that, again, if you say, hey, I want to install these charging stations, you have to type it out in a contract, quantify it. How many charging stations? Quantified what type of a conduit, quantified what type of a cable, because quite frankly, they might undersize it. Again, unintentionally, but you need to have a contract. It's very difficult because this is, if you go into it, you're not an expert, but then you have to become an expert by reaching out to permitting as well your utility, and they're gonna guide you to the right answers, if that makes sense. Yeah, and the other things, number 5, is also weekly important. You might list items in the contract that are not included, meaning that you are well aware that the contract will not do those things. Okay, internet setup, and that's the last one's the expected duration of the installation. That's going to be very difficult to put on the contract, but if you can at least give a window, so at least your project is not being installed. I think that's the next slide. I believe that might be it for me. Oh, yes, yes. Yes, last slide, I think. Yes, so promote your stations, right? So one of the requirements from the rebates is actually you have to register for some of those websites. So you have to register to PlugShare so you can advertise it. So it's being public, meaning it's going into national and international databases. So anybody can look it up, the EV charging stations in the vicinity. US Department of Energy, alternative fuel station locator. You have to, we did locate it, but that was one of our requirements as well. Just, hey, sign up that EV charging station to Google Maps, as well as maybe if you have a website for your community, add them as well. Because it's very important for any new users as well, maybe those individuals that would like to move in your neighborhood. And maybe one of the things they're gonna decide where to move in based on the availability of level 2 chargers in the community. So in a way, it's a win-win situation. You're advertising your community as well. You provide the service to your current and future residents. So with that said, thank you for your time, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate your presentation there. I think we have one last presentation, Rokas Beresniovis, and you'll correct me if I have mispronounced your name, Rokas, but he's the Director of Commercial Business for the Montgomery County Green Bank and can talk briefly about some of the financing opportunities. As you heard from Robert, this is not necessary to come out of cash reserves. There are financing opportunities in addition to the rebates, and the Green Bank is a terrific resource in our community, and Rokas is here to describe some of those.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. I will only take 3 minutes. I promise most of you have probably heard of us and know who we are, and some probably are working with us already. If you go to the next slides, Mark, thank you. Some of you probably still scratching your heads and trying to figure out what is Green Bank. Just a quick overview of who we are. So we are not your typical bank across the street. We don't have accounts or deposits. We are more like an investment fund, and think of us the same way you think of a blood bank or food bank. We are a bank of resources for anything that has to do with renewables or energy efficiency. That includes EV charging infrastructure. We were chartered by Montgomery County. However, we are an independent 501c3 not-for-profit organization. Our purpose is to accelerate investment in energy efficiency and renewable energy in the county by partnering up with the private sector. Our goal is to support Montgomery County's climate goal to reduce GHG to 0 by 2035. Next slide, Mark. So this is a quick overview of how we can be a resource for common ownership communities. Green Bank provides technical assistance. What does that mean? So if a property knows or wants to make energy efficiency improvements, but doesn't know Where to start? In most cases, we would pay for or share the cost of energy performance audit or assessment to help the properties or communities get started. These assessments are done by engineers, so identify energy efficiency measures as well as potentially any type of rebates or utility incentives. That includes EV charging infrastructure as well. We can also help with feasibility studies, whether it's EV charging infrastructure or solar. In terms of financial products, you see here a list of what we offer, but specifically related to EV charging infrastructure. Take a look at our Green Bridge loan samples in the next couple of slides at your own leisure. Essentially, we can bridge the gap between getting you started with financing the EV charging infrastructure upfront. You will only be responsible for interest-only payments. The loan will be repaid with incentives and grants, and all is left is interest and out-of-pocket costs, which is about a couple $1,000. Want to pocket the incentives and use them for other critical repairs in the community? Great. We can then term the loan out to either 3 or 5 years. Contact information in the next couple of slides. Thank you so much for putting this together, Mark. Really appreciate it.
You're quite
Looking
welcome.
forward to working with you. Thanks.
And we'll also be doing a solar seminar in about a month, where we'll be doing pretty much anything solar. We're forming it up right now. We should have the information on it getting ready to go out probably in about the next 2 weeks. We'll get ready to start opening up for Q&A. In addition to the presenters that are here, I'd like to thank every one of them for everything they've been saying. We've also got, I believe, 4 of the commissioners here. The Honorable Marvin Holmes is here. He is a commissioner with CCOC here in Montgomery County, as well as Prince George's County. He's chair of the Real Property Housing Subcommittee. He pretty much oversees all the bills that come in for common ownership. He has been a great friend and a great ally. In addition to him, you have Susan Erlinger. She is the chair of the Commission's Education and Outreach Committee. We have Eric Herron. He is a commissioner, also an attorney. So he's been answering a lot. And Terry Anderson is here. I'm not sure. Did I see Sonia come on, or is she Sunday? Sonia Burke?
I am here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yes.
And Sonia Burke is here. She is with Department of Permitting Services. So if you've got any of the questions there, we've run through probably 100 questions already. There are several more. There are some questions that we got in. I will read a couple. If you would like to, anybody wants to grab it, just let me know. This one is from Wheaton Town Condominium Section 1. They're saying that the arrangement of buildings and parking lots is such that there's no direct vehicle access to half of the townhouse units. Therefore, there's no way for the units to install individual charging stations, forcing multiple owners to share the EV charging points, which are distances from their homes. They're wanting to know, is there any way that they can get some assistance to possibly work and put these units in the master buildings? And I can probably answer this one for y'all. I think somebody's gonna have to go out and look at the facility to see where the parking area is and what can be done to get the wires to where they need to be, because it's kind of hard without a visual of where this thing is. I'm familiar with the association, but I'm not familiar with the part he's talking about. So I'll forward this up to you, Brian, if you can maybe touch base with them.
Sure thing.
let's see, that one was answered. We have a lot of questions asking, are we going to put a transcript of all the questions out? The answer to that is yes. It'll be posted with the questions and answers and the video. We will just redact the email information, but the questions will in fact be there. I have a very lengthy one here from Waters Landing. Did you answer this one yet, Brian? Waters Landing HOA?
I don't know from the name of the association, sorry.
Okay. Basically, there are about 6 to 10 EVs currently in the townhouse community. They want to put more in the next years. They are trying to solve is some of the townhouses don't have the garages nor driveways nor deeded parking spaces. What can we do about the Maryland right to charge law? And can they put the charging stations in the parking spaces? And I guess it goes back to the question, if the space is deeded to the person, yes. But if it's not deeded, they don't own it. That is space of the association. So the association would need to put those parking spots someplace where it's not in a reserved, if you will, because if you stick it in a reserved spot, the spot technically belongs to the person it's reserved for, but anybody can use the EV. You want to chime in on that one, Brian?
Yeah, I think, the trade-off is going to be that convenience of being able to have that dedicated space, for charging and if it's an assigned space, they know that, hey, that's my space. I know I have my charger there. Versus, it sounds like there's a desire to have a shared charging area or shared charging system, which I think, it can be a great solution. It is so hard to give a broad recommendation about the best way to do it without knowing the specific layout of the parking lot and the specific needs of the community. One thing I like to default back to is that level 1 outlets, just a standard 120 volt outlet, can meet a lot of people's charging needs with less expense, less electrical work, and may be able to be a good stopgap or a good solution to extend the number of spaces that have some EV charging. It may be that you have, a couple level 2 spaces that people that are in a shared space that people can coordinate around, and then more level 1 outlets around the property that make it possible for people to charge even if they don't have access to it. Mark has addressed the right to charge question. I'll stay away from that one. But I think that is a very important question that I think a lot of our attendees have. Yeah.
Yeah. Another one we have is, what's the recommended ratio of a community units to the EV charging stations? And is there one?
I think
optimally 100%, but
I think we don't know yet. I think like one level 2 plug, if people can share that resource and coordinate when their car is plugged in, and that's not too much of a hassle for folks, you could share that level 1 plug with 3 or 4 vehicles. But that may not, or you can share that level 2 plug, with 3 or 4 vehicles. But yeah, we don't know the right ratio. And one thing I'll say that, we're making recommendations around the state of the technology today. And it may be that, a few years from now, the batteries charge faster, the range is longer, you don't have to charge as often. And that changes the calculation about that ratio. You know, I'd say look to meet your needs today and then forecast for, you know, double, triple the number of vehicles in your space when you look ahead 3 or 4 years from now, because I think it's very likely that we're going to be growing at a very rapid pace in terms of the number of EVs on the road here in the county. And if you have the ability to do electrical work and make that make ready work now, it's going to benefit you, like Robert was talking about. He said, go big if you can. And yeah, I think it would definitely benefit you in the longer run.
Got one for Anthony. How are the county policies and incentives for multi-unit EV charging stations addressing the following facts? Permitting. It's very inconvenient to be required to schedule charging in advance. We can't get a one size fits all. And what is the county going to do to assist us in the process of the permitting? That's a whole lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, permitting is a standard process. You have to submit your design, we review it, and we approve it. If there's issues, we send it back for corrections, you correct it, review it again, and finally we give the approval. That is when now your electrician will start the installation. All right, with the permits in hand, he can start the installation, and then we'll get inspections, ensuring that the job is being done right as you go along. So you will call like 3 or 4 inspections before the final to ensure that you're doing the right thing. Okay, so that's the process. I mean, for everyone.
Right. And I would even jump in and say, you've got 6 or 7 experts on here right now that have been explaining how to do the process. Call on them. They said they'd help you. And I don't mean to begrudge anybody in the Q&A, but just for transparency's sake, if they are not a panel member, or they're not somebody that you see on this side of the screen or mentioned on this side of the screen, the advice they are giving you right now is not the advice of Montgomery County. And I've been seeing this about 7 or 8 times today. And I'm not saying it's bad advice they're giving. I'm just saying, understand, it is not the advice of this seminar. So you need to reach out to the experts in this field. They are here. We will have all their information up on the site within the next coming few days, and they will assist you. So please take them up on it. Now, if they're, Terry, am I missing any that need to go here, or do we just want to open up the lines?
Well, I think we can honestly just open up the lines. There's only a few unanswered questions still in the Q&A.
Okay, for the attendees, I believe if you go to the reactions button, if you don't see a raised hand function, if you go to the reactions button, click it, you should see a raise hand. Go ahead, and if you have a question, raise your hand. Terry and myself will go ahead and unmute you. You can ask your question to any member of the panel.
Yes.
The other question, if you don't mind, another question, excuse me. I'd like to make a point. On one of the slides, I'm sure will be provided to all the attendees. There's a website to Clarksburg Condominium 2. And there's a dedicated site for the EVSEs, and there's a lot of information, actionable information, specifically Q&As. I'm still administrating that site, so I was building that information as I was building the project. So those are specific questions from the homeowners and specific answers to the questions, because everybody has a different idea what the project is. So go ahead and reached out to that resource from Plasma Condo 2
We
website.
appreciate that, Robert. Thanks.
And I would encourage all the projects to do the same thing.
Terry, don't move them over. We're just gonna let them talk.
That's all I did, but they moved over on their own when I said allowed to talk.
Okay,
I think it was me. I raised.
Ms. Sherman, go ahead and,
Yes. Hi, how are you
Hi.
doing?
Good, how about yourself?
So I have two questions really. One is I'm hearing mixed feelings about the consultant side of this. So I am the president of a condo association in Montgomery County. We have 277 properties, of which a significant number of those are condo units. And then we have, I don't know, forgot the number, but it's close to 100 townhouses. So we are seriously considering this. We do know that we would have to change bylaws. But my question is, you know, since I'm not an expert in any of this, is navigating all of this alone? Is there really enough resources that we could do this on our own without hiring a consultant, so that we get the answers correctly? And that's really my biggest concern to start this journey.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that, Ms. Sherman. Thank you for the question. Yeah, it's definitely a complicated issue, and you know, I've been studying it now, you know, for weeks just to develop this presentation, and you know, for longer to understand it. And I wouldn't know where to start on a specific project necessarily, and I'll admit that, right? You know, I think it's very, very useful to have a professional electrical engineer who can give you those specific recommendations. And you know, I'll just speak that, you know, us at DEP, you know, we're hearing the challenges that people have had, and we're trying to understand whether there is a program that the county, you know, could offer, that we could recommend that the county offer, to provide that upfront consultation, that upfront technical support. I can't promise that is something that will go ahead, but that is
Brian.
Yes. Hey,
Hey,
Rokas.
this is Rokas from Montgomery County Green Bank. Hey, so the county created us, you know, we definitely here to provide the resources. We can provide the type of resources. We can pay for technical assistance. Just make sure you reach out to us, and we are here to help you. We're not just a bank, we are a bank of resources. So just remember that. Thanks.
So did you leave, would there be an opportunity for contact information? Because
Yes, ma'am. We're gonna post all the panelist information up when we put everything up. We'll also have the email information, as well as all the Q&A, all the slides, and a video of this entire thing.
That is wonderful, because we are, I think our condo association is perfect for this, because we don't have assigned seat, we don't have assigned spaces, and we have plenty of parking. So, you know,
Sure.
We are a new board, and we've been walking around looking at this as an opportunity, especially since we have been asked over and over for this.
Now,
So-
Please give me a call tomorrow. I look forward to talking to you. And you know, we have approved contractors that are working with us
Okay.
to provide this type of studies and support.
and
That would
then,
be wonderful.
right, we'll have the stuff posted on the CCOC website. Just go to Google, type in CCOC, hit Department of Housing Community Affairs, and then go to training and webinar. And you'll see it
Okay.
posted there. And then we will also make it available to all the partners that are here, so they can put it on their links too.
And by the way, this was really informative. So thank you so much for putting this together.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Don. Hold over.
I had a couple of questions, which a bunch that I submitted in advance, but what's currently on my mind is how to find a contact at our electric supplier in order Pepco to find out what the load capacity is of our building. It's a 50-unit condominium roughly, and with about 30 garages. And what I was interested in as a first approach to EV solutions is to enable individual garages to have level 1 service. And I spoke to a company called Plugzio that provides metering technology. And I ran into a few roadblocks there because I wanted to get more particular information and didn't know where to begin. And
You said Pepco, right?
yes.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, Don, thanks for the question. If you're looking for information about capacity going to your building or capacity of your feeder, reach out via the contacts after this webinar, and we can help you with that. I'm thinking of some folks that I can connect you with directly if procedurally our systems don't get you there, but that shouldn't be difficult information to find.
I figured it should be easy. And you know, the secondary question was about how to deal with the case study helped dealing with the fact that level 1 chargers only addresses those people who own garages, and that's obviously not the full complement of owners in our complex. And there are 3 other buildings in the complex, and to provide equitable access to EV charging would have to incorporate a plan for those folks as well. And it would seem that the load factor would be, the potential load factor would grow substantially since the number of vehicles per.
Hey, Don, this is too complicated for you to figure out.
Yes.
Contact the Green Bank. We'll send you a, we'll send you a list of couple contractors who can take a look at this. Our contractors are very familiar with the Pepco incentives and state grants, and they'll be able to assist you with a turnkey solution. You shouldn't be singing that hard, especially at this time of the day.
Don, I will send you Rokas and Dan's info, and I'll CC them on it. And I'll do the same thing for Ms. Sherman. I'll send her Rokas's information too, so that you guys can connect with each other.
Super.
Okay.
And Don, one thing I just wanted to know, you mentioned that the level 1 works for private garages, but not necessarily for a kind of a shared parking situation. It may still be the case that if you could install a level 1 outlet that is accessible from that unassigned parking area in maybe a number of different places, then someone can bring their own plug into that outlet and meet their needs just fine. So whether or not it's in a private garage, and I'm familiar with the Plugzio company that you mentioned, I think that's an example of a smart level 1 outlet that will give you the functionality to manage access and charge for energy as well. So I think that it could be a solution that is not just for a level 1, not just for a private garage.
I'll keep that in mind. Are there any other companies besides Plugzio who have that kind of an offering for level 1?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I have your email. I can send you some of the resources I found about this.
That would be helpful.
All right. Thank you, sir. Christine.
Yeah, my question is, I'm at the Willoughby and we have 815 units, and
Oh, yeah.
So you know about us.
I'm very familiar.
Okay, so I'm feeling like, first of all, we require a bylaw change and everything else. Like, I don't even know if there's a point in trying to do anything here, although people have been asking, and that's why I'm listening, and I'll probably tune in again on the 11th to hear it again because it's overwhelming.
No problem. And I'll probably get shot by Brian for suggesting this, but based on the size of that place, if y'all throw in dinner down on the first floor, I could probably work out something to where we could maybe do a presentation specifically for you, because you've got what, 800 units in there?
815 units, and I was sort of looking at how many plugs there are and spaces, and then when you mentioned the thing about installing these chargers, they might affect the structural integrity. We already have so many issues.
I know. Did they get the reno done yet?
No, that's finally just starting. You know how slow things go here. I mean,
I know.
we'll never make it in time for it.
I'm with you there. No, I'll give you my contact and we'll be more than happy to see what we can do to maybe help you out.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking it would be good if we had a small group talk to you. Anyway,
yeah, and we can set it up to do Zoom, or we can do in person down at the Bethesda regional if we need to.
Yeah, or even like you said here to look at what we have. But
Right.
but anyway, yeah, send me. So can you email me or?
Sure.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Mark, I'll just say I am more than happy to offer that as a opportunity to meet with anybody who wants to talk about this in more detail.
I'm doing it because of the Italian down below.
Same here, Mark.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to stay
Green
on
Bank
task.
is
All right, well, get on task. All right, thank you. Saul, you're up.
Thanks, Mark. My question to you, I guess, would be our community consists of lots of townhomes, and the parking is reserved for each resident. Each resident has about 2 parking spots, depending on the community, sometimes up to 1. Do you have any case studies or information where perhaps the owner could use their own power to use the community space to put on their power? Do you have any case studies or any best practices within regards to that particular scenario? Because that's kind of our mix here. We do have some condos, we do have some single family homes, but quite a few of our residences are townhomes. So just wondering if you could speak to that.
I'll do one, then I'll turn it over to Brian. The commission would absolutely recommend not running the extension from the home to your spot. Because if somebody was to, you got a trip hazard there, somebody could sue you and the association.
Let me correct that. I have seen examples in Fairfax where the owner goes underground and there is a pole or a station where they can charge, where they can't sort of trip per se. It's more of on the side of their parking spot or right behind in like green space on their parking. So in that scenario, is that possible, or you've not seen it, or you don't recommend it, or?
Have we done that up here yet, Brian, where we do individual wiring from the home?
So the county has a program called the right-of-way charging program, and it allows you to apply for a permit to install charging on the public right-of-way. There are a number of restrictions on how that program operates. You can't use it to reserve that space. It's generally for charging on the public right-of-way. And I don't know, I can't speak to whether that'll apply to any of the situation that you have. Whether that is land owned by the association, or if it is in fact the public right-of-way. But yes,
owned by the association. Go ahead.
So if it's land owned by the association, that maybe some of the folks from the CCOC can confirm, but that should be an option. It's land owned by the association, and you could install a charger on a pedestal in that it's not the public right of way, but it is adjacent to the parking area. Whether or not you are allowed to extend wiring from your unit to that space, I think would be an association question, but it is certainly physically possible, and you do see, like you said, in Fairfax and in Montgomery County, examples of that.
and I would let Eric or Delegate jump in on this one. If you're going to do that, you would want the association to put in something in their governing documents that would protect you, because the spot isn't yours, it's for your exclusive use. And if you go through the hassle of paying for putting that thing in, and Joe Doe down the street decides he's parking in your parking spot, you're going to run into a problem.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. And, you know, and Green Bank sees this type of things all the time. You know, once we do these energy performance audits or feasibility studies, you know, we see these residents running level 1 chargers. And most of them have an approval of the board, but they are public parking spaces. So if someone else parks it, there's really nothing you can do about it. Just, you know, get an extension cord.
Yeah, because in order for you to claim it as your own, it's got to be a deeded spot.
And there's a provision in the law, Mark, that does talk about easements relevant to HOAs and condominiums. So you are correct. There is a provision, and the board of directors has to approve that itself.
Yeah, they'd have to pass something for his exclusive use.
But it is a reserved spot, and there are already towing policies in place for anybody unauthorized parking in that reserved spot.
Right, you would just have to do a modification to your document.
Okay.
If I might add, one of the things you might think about it when it comes from the perspective of association, they may actually install the infrastructure, make it ready, meaning that the association would be responsible to laying down the conduit and the service to each individual spot that's dedicated to homeowner, and then it will be up to the homeowner to make the final installation of the EVAC at that particular spot.
That is an incredibly good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Lexi, haven't talked to you in a while. You there? Lexi May?
I don't know. I haven't allowed her to talk.
Here she
yet.
goes.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
I'm on now.
Okay,
You know,
haven't talked to you in a bit.
Yeah, I know. We're in the process right now of approving, we have a new owner in the neighborhood, a doctor, and so she's got really odd hours, and she has a Tesla, and we're working on approving, letting her run the wires underneath and having her just sign a statement. One of our neighboring associations did this, and she's responsible for the maintenance. She's responsible for the insurance, even though she can run it underground. So, I mean, we're looking at doing that now just because we can't make a decision right away. And this is something that needs to be.
Yeah, make sure you run it through your council.
What do you mean to our council?
The agreement.
Yeah,
That
okay.
you're going to sign with them. Just make sure council signs off on it.
Okay,
You don't put yourself into a problem.
okay.
Okay.
Yep. Thank
All right.
you.
Give me a call when you can.
Okay, will do.
All right. Thanks.
Miss you.
Riza.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Max from the Greens at Leisure World. I wanted to thank all the panelists for the excellent presentations. I think they flattened the learning curve considerably. I just wanted to bring up a conceptual issue and to see if any of the panelists would agree with the author of a recent Slate magazine article that in the public mind, a paradigm shift is urgently needed. So we must stop thinking of recharging opportunities as gas stations of yore, but we must think of them instead of Wi-Fi hotspots, which we expect to have just about everywhere. You go to a dentist, you go to a supermarket, you expect to have Wi-Fi. Because I think that's also hindering the progress. People think of these charging stations as gas stations, and they're not.
I like that concept.
Yeah, it was in Slate magazine. I'll see if I can find you earlier this year. It was a very helpful article.
I think you're totally right that this involves a paradigm shift and changing how we think about it. You know, a lot of times the question is asked, how long does it take to charge? And the EV driver, you know, said to me, well, what do you mean, how long does it take to charge? It takes 1 second. I get out of my car at home and I plug it in and I'm done. And I don't, you know, then I come back and my car is full whenever I need it. So it's less about the time that you're having to dedicate to be somewhere to charge, and then versus just having charging ubiquitously available in the places where we spend most of our time and need it. And so, you know, I think we are still learning as a whole industry. You know, I don't know if we have all the answers about exactly what our infrastructure is going to look like in 5 years. But I think it is exactly right that this paradigm shift is what we need. And it's very different, you know, from what people are used to. And that's one of the barriers to get past in order for more people to feel comfortable making the switch. But to the extent that we can extend charging access in places where people spend the night and live, that's going to go a long way.
And with Wi-Fi, you'd be surprised, even annoyed if someone doesn't offer Wi-Fi at whatever speed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But with gasoline, it's diesel, it's octane levels and so on, but electricity is electricity. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Now, don't shoot me, ma'am. I'm going to try and get this right. Ms. Centofanti?
Yes, yes, that's correct. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for this wonderful seminar. Like Christine, I'm in a high rise, but fortunately we have only 400 units, not 800. And we have 200 outdoor unassigned spaces. Our only downside is that was built in 1964. So the main breaker panel looks like something out of the Poseidon Adventure, and we can probably only squeeze out one, you know, charger out of it. So we are likely to have to do what Robert did at Clarksburg and get a dedicated line if it's at all feasible. So my question for him is, did he consider, or is it feasible at all, to have added a solar panel to that commercial 400 amp commercial line he brought in to feed back into the network to offset some of the cost?
Hey, Anita, it sounds like you need to call the Green Bank and we can send something out. One of our approved engineers to take a look what you need.
Yeah, that's it. What I'm gathering from this seminar is that we kind of need to start with you to get some resources to help us with the next steps.
Yeah, exactly. We have a bank in our title, but we are more than a bank. We're here to help.
Great.
I'll send you over the info to connect, but yeah, if you've got space on your roof, utilize it.
Well, it wouldn't be on the roof. The panel would be out in the parking garage with wherever that transformer or that box.
Yeah, wherever you can put it.
Where the line terminates and.
Right.
And we do have a grassy space between the parking lot and the road. So if we were able to bring in a service line, a green hot box, whatever Pepco calls them, could be put there.
And if Robert doesn't object, I'll put his information in there too.
That's good.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, no problem. We'll take care of it. And Mujanti, I believe. Mr. Gill. I'm sorry. There we go. Try it now. Hello?
He may not be there anymore, Mark. I'm not sure. Mr. Gill, Miss Gill?
There you go.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I'm not sure. I must have accidentally raised my hand, but I'm just listening in. Thanks for all the presentation.
Oh, sure.
For our community, we're Twinbrook Forest, right off of Twinbrook Road, and we're a small 40 group community. I think I heard about an individual who mentioned that they have the same situation where our vehicles are parked a little bit away from like the row homes or the townhomes that are next to each other. And, you know, only real way for us to get, we have 3 vehicles that are right now EVs. Only real way for us to get electric power is for them to run a line. And we're trying to promote getting a line underground, but it seems like the right-of-way charging program is probably the best option for us. We really don't have any centralized location where we could create the chargers and for individuals to park their cars and charge, unless we were to lay down new asphalt and, you know, adjacent space area like green space, and then create a charging platform. Everybody's kind of really, they have their 2 parking spots, and I don't think there's a way for us to figure that out.
Brian, you okay if I pass your info to him?
Yeah, certainly. And one thing I just want to correct, you know, the right-of-way charging program is a program for charging on the public right-of-way. It's reserved for residential properties only. In your association where, you know, it's owned, the land is owned by the association, you know, that would be a standard, you know, commercial building permit, and for a charging project, you know, you just would want to design your project accordingly. And whether it is running a line to the individual townhomes and they're each metered individually, or you create a, you know, new sort of general meter, you know, for everyone, and you figure out how to you know, bill out that energy usage. Either one of those options could work for an arrangement like that.
For individual houses, so I have 2 questions. And, you know, for individual houses that have, you know, for townhomes that are individually, if we're allowing our members to individually install a level 2 charger and run the line, whether that is run the line out to the outlet or install the receptacle unit outside in the grassy area adjacent to the parking spot. What is the, I'm assuming that the rebate program that for community does not apply, and that'll be like just a single home rebate program. What kind of rebate can they apply for?
It's a good question. It would, I believe you'd be able to take advantage of the Maryland Energy Administration EVSC rebate, because that doesn't have a restriction on building type. Whether or not and how you would access the utility programs would be a question for the utility.
Yes, and
Dan, can I send him to you also?
I also believe
Okay.
that the rebate really depends what's the entity that applies for it. So even though the association is applying it, meaning that will be a commercial, right? But if individual homeowner is installing it, that would be a residential rebate, which is much less than the commercial. And the residential rebate is about $700 per address. And then if I may add something, because I believe that there's a little bit need of a different mindset when it comes to parking spaces. Because I have my understanding is that a lot of us thinking about, we have X amount of parking spaces, and once we're gonna create EV charging stations, we're gonna take away, meaning we're gonna be less. We're gonna actually decrease the number of spaces. In fact, yes, but also remember that those vehicles that will be charging, they'll be currently alternating, meaning that once the adoption percentage increases per association, now the EV charging stations will be the most desired spaces to park or charge than the rest of the parking spaces. So those that are being taken away will be the most utilized parking spaces when EV adoption increases. So that's a little bit different mindset, and that's how I actually overcome my objections from my community, because parking spaces is really extremely hot topic, and rightfully so. Everybody would like to park the vehicle at night when they come home, and that's what I presented to them, and they agreed. So again, different mindset when it comes to the parking situation and EV charging stations.
Okay. All right, closing it down. Any other questions out there?
No addition, oh, we
Wait a
just
minute,
had
got
one
one up.
raised.
Now, where'd she go? Geraldine Lee. There she is.
She's in
Miss
the
Lee?
gallery.
Hi. It's really Jerry Lee, but my mother.
Oh, sorry. Hi.
I said my mother gave me that name, Geraldine, but it's really Jerry Lee.
Okay.
I am president of the Homeowners Association in Montgomery Chase. We're at Georgia and Connecticut. My question is, you keep saying that the multifamily homes, condos can get the rebate. We're 152 piggyback condos. Would we qualify for rebates?
The multifamily property rebate from the utilities, and Dan can confirm, I think it's defined by multifamily buildings of 4 or more units, but Dan perhaps can confirm how that works.
3, yeah, at least 3 units in one building.
Okay, we're not buildings, we're piggyback condos. Like I live up top, 2 stories, someone lives 2 stories behind me, then I'm connected to the left with a home above this 2 stories, and they have a home below them, there's 2 stories. That's kind of how we were built in 1983.
Yeah, but aren't they like blocks of 10?
Oh, we're all connected. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a whole block. We're all connected. So that considers.
So I would think it'd be classified as a multi.
Okay. All right.
Do you pay into your HO? Do you have any type of association that encompasses all of those units under one entity?
Yeah, I'm the president of the Homeowners Association here. Yes.
Yeah. So I believe that, again, this is just my belief, but you can reach out directly to the rebates programs with that question. But me reading the requirements, I think you qualify because you are the association. So there'll be a commercial installation.
And thank you very much. And I must say, this is an excellent presentation, and I thank you all for your information.
Thank you. Jean Kennedy.
Yes, I have a question of I guess it's Mr. Bower or also the man from Clarksburg. When you're talking about 6 cars per charger, about 4 to 6 cars, and you make it sound wonderful because now everybody wants it. Well, therein lies a problem. How do you get someone out of the spot after they've charged so that somebody else can get in? They all want to come home after work or at the end of the day and charge. How do you organize such a thing? They have to have another spot to go to, etc. Just give me a kind of a picture that I'm not getting.
Okay, let me jump in. I'm laughing because it's just the human etiquette. That's just plain like that. It's just we have to wait it out and see how it unfolds, right? And I'm looking for the best in our human beings. But if things go south, then the EV charging stations software has capability. So most of them have a capability to have different charges, meaning you can actually incorporate an idling fee. Once a vehicle charges fully, you might give it like 15 or 30 minutes of a free pass, and after that you start billing it. So you can bill them $1 per minute, $1 per hour, whatever you think. So that would be the financial incentive to make sure that those stalls are not being hogged. Or
okay, got it.
But
Thank you.
But in my opinion, let's wait. The way I have it, let's wait for the best. Let's work it out. So it's just being nice neighbor.
Yeah, well, I can see you coming in at 6 o'clock, putting it in, and it's supposed to be done at 10, and you go to bed and forget, whatever. And then you have to move yours out back to your own parking spot. Is that correct? Is that you keep that?
Yeah. So again, nobody knows that. I mean, that we are the early birds, right? So we're gonna figure it out. And again, me as a board member, I would not expect a homeowner to wake up at 10 o'clock at night to move the vehicles. So the next neighbor might
just an education process.
So maybe they're gonna be a cutoff. By 9 o'clock, let's say you have to move your vehicle if you charge, but past 9 o'clock, just.
And one key point here is that every vehicle does not need to charge every day. most people are only driving 40 miles a day or less. So you can come home, charge for a couple hours, move your vehicle, and then you might not need to charge for, until the weekend or for, until next week. And so because you don't need to recharge every day, you could work it out with your neighbors, or you can actually have a formal system of reservation. This is my day to charge or something like that. That may be a way that you can work it out and everybody knows what to expect. And then you don't have any concerns that you're going to, wake up empty and need it.
Yeah, that's good point. And, and there's a lot of communities that have like leaders, green committees and things like that, and people that drive, EVs. They start these groups, they get to know each other, they get to know who, is parked there. And Parkside, I think, is a great example that I'm familiar with. They just installed 2 EV charging stations, and it's over 1 million square feet community. It's over 1,000 units. It's huge. And I have this group, right? So if one charger is down, they all text each other and say, hey, when you fill up your vehicle, can you please move it? And I think, everyone is kind of playing nicely. So it's great to see examples like that as well. It's like what Robert says, you got this human element here, which is awesome. Thanks.
It would be great if there was some kind of an app on your phone that dinged when it was charged, or someone could ding you and say,
yeah, they do. Most of these chargers have your apps. Most of the vehicles have the apps. So, when the charge is complete, they'll notify.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take one last question and then we're going to get going. Before we do that, though, I would ask, we still have well over 135 people listening in. When you sign off, you will be polled for a quick, I believe it's an 8-question survey. If you would take a second, if you haven't done that, and send it in, if you could take a second and fill that in, it would greatly help us so we know how to schedule the next one, so we know what's more important for folks. We really appreciate that. And thank you all for attending. And then Ms. Harrington, you are up.
Hi, my question is, how do we get the Public Service Commission to allow Pepco to give the rebates to those of us who are on a master meter? As of now, they don't do that. And my Leisure World, half of its houses are and multifamily units are on the master meter, and to put the charging stations in without the rebates is a hefty dollar value.
Now, have you spoken to any of the council members?
No.
You might want to start there because a couple of them are on the PSC.
Okay.
And they are very active in what's going on. I would reach out to Mr. Katz. I'd reach out to Mr. Hucker and start there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
I
mean to
also
jump
wanna
in
say
on you
that
there, Dan.
There are a couple communities on master meter that we did the projects for, and the Pepco was able to do the grants and the incentives. So I think what you guys need is just to make sure that the contractor you use is familiar with what's available.
Well, we have I've been around and around with Pepco. I've talked to Pepco a lot, and a lot of people and the contractors. And what you're saying was not something that anybody owned up to being able to do.
Call the Green Bank. We might be able to help you.
Thank you. I'll do that.
And I will put you on the list, ma'am, and send you the info.
Thank you very much.
Uh-huh. Okay. My panelists, I wish to wholeheartedly thank you for sticking in there. The folks that attended, we hope you enjoyed it. We thought it was something that needed to be brought out there. We're going to have a couple of more. As I said, we're doing another solar, and we're working on another one for reserves again, to kind of help you answer some questions on it, what you need to do in your budget. So with that, look for the survey when you sign off, and please look for the version of this, as well as the presentation slides and the Q&A and stuff, to be on the commission website. We hope to have it within about 7 days. Please bear with this. We are having some IT issues, but we're going to get it there as soon as possible. If not, I will put it up in my personal cloud and give you the link to that. So we'll do whatever we need to do to get it out to you. But we thank everybody for their participation. If you have any questions that you would like to get answered, you're gonna, when you get that email from me tomorrow, please respond to it and ask what you want, and then I'll make sure that the appropriate people get it. If you have any critiques, please put it in there. Any comments, good, bad, or indifferent, we greatly appreciate it. And with that, I would say everyone have a good night, and my panelists, any closing thoughts? You can unmute. Just click that little button.
Hey, I'll start first. Thanks, Mark, for hosting this. Again, Green Bank is here to help you guys to navigate these complicated waters. We not just a bank providing finances, we offer technical assistance. We have approved contractors that we work with to send them over to you guys who are familiar with all of the county laws, all of the state laws, all of the incentives available, all of the utility incentives available. So don't hesitate to just reach out to us, and you'll see my contact information in this presentation once you get it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Anybody?
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. I think this is so exciting to see so much interest in this topic, and please reach out to me. It sounds like, you know, Rokas is going to have a lot of expert opinions and advice for everybody, but I am happy to be a resource, especially like Mark suggested, if you want someone to come to your community and help you through this process as well. I'm happy to do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for participating, and we are so glad to be able to bring you this very valuable and pertinent information at this time. We look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.